Alright, welcome back to the practical session of Interceptors, and my name is Ngane Emmanuel and I'm a software engineer and I will be your course instructor for this particular session and lesson. And you are watching a lesson part of a series building secure, scalable, fault tolerance and low latency APIs with Spring Boot and Java. Please, if you have not watched the previous videos, please go ahead and watch them. We have a lot of videos, a lot of content. They will be important for context. And like, share, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get notified when I upload new content. And the relevant informations like the link to the GitHub repo and the link to my socials are in the description below. And today we are going to be tackling interceptors. But before that, right, I needed to do something. I need to change the implementation of the login, the register, right, to basically return a token. So we created a method, WT token, and we created the methods in our filter. If you watch the filter video, we created the JWT token. I've shown you the implementation of it. So we have a JWT token, and it's just a token that it has the access token and the refresh token. And essentially, I want to so it's going to take a user, and again we're going to get the user request. So in this case, we don't want to bind directly to the user, so we are going to have a DTO, and in this we have update user, right? We have the first name, blah blah blah, and what we need now is we talked about DTO. We have register, sorry, user, right? And essentially it's a DTO which is going to take in so it's going to take in first name, so private string first name, so private string last name, private string email, private string password, and private string private no, I think we're going to do no, we're not going to set the role. Right, so the role is going to be set by us, right? And obviously if we go to the method, we can set default, right? We can set default at the role here, and I think it's going to be, I think it's like default. Yeah, something like that. Also I want to check. Oh, the data persistence generated as constructor node data. So you just kind of include data persistence. Alright, so we can set a default here, but that would be like creating an entire persist kind of variable here. But the idea I want to do is keep it inside, okay? And what I want to, so in our register user, let's just say we are creating every person like a user, right? And we're going to have, I don't know, we can have like a user type, private user type, so that we can have, let's keep it simple, right? So we have first name. What do we have here? First name, last name, username. Oh, username, we forgot username. Private string username, there we go. Then we have email and password, there we go. And that will be our register user. And so, rather than the user here, we are just going to use register. Again, register user. Remember, we are using DTOs, right? And that DTO, right, they will protect us against a lot of things, because we can now include validation checks here. We can have at not null, again at not null. We can have that at not null and at not null. Okay. At not null. We can also put our validation, which we did for, I think, our update user. No contains character. You can have that validation here. And not contain special character. Again, you can have that here, the first name and the last name. So the not null, it's definitely initialize constructor. Oh, so we have add data. So we can have our components for Lombok at all arguments constructor and at no arguments constructor. There we go. We also have a data for getters and setters, right? Yeah. So annotations not allowed here. What do you mean annotations are not allowed here? Anyway, so we can have a builder to be able to build kind of in that way you can leave it there, but let's just character. Hold on. No. There we go. Okay, I think the first one I did not put the @ sign. So you can have all of that. And we can again, these are like restricted special characters. Although here we don't want to restrict special characters, and what will happen is that whatever they send here will simply just convert we'll convert it to decrypt, right? But for now we'll leave it empty, right? Because to implement the decrypt, we need to like import decrypt and then cryptography. You know what? While we are building it, we'll just do it here. So and again, you can create an implementation here, something like add encrypt, right? Something like that. And like we did our encryption, where's our notation? Not require rule. You can have this one, something like this, and encrypt the class encrypt. Let's say encrypt password, because there's a lot of encrypts, right? But anyway, we just like add encrypt here, and essentially we can set the retention time at one time, and the target should be field parameter, element of field parameter, right? And here we should have I think there's a method that's supposed to go here, which will be oh, this one just checks. I don't know, can you get, I'm thinking, you know, when we annotate it, it's going to encrypt that and then it's going to put it back within the class. Which is the annotations check, run checks. So I'm going to ask, oh, sorry about that. So new GPT, hey, but can you create an annotation that encrypts a text or a string within, let me say, a string of a field from a class and update update that same field with, I don't think that will work with the encrypted text. So I want to do that with the password field with encryption using bcrypt. Okay, this is interesting. Encrypted, yeah. So we create the retention time document. I don't know what I documented. Okay, that would be my first time to use this annotation. Again, I'm going to find out again. I'm learning a lot. Yes, we use the, so we will create the implementation, encrypt listener, and private static, bcrypt encoder, bcrypt password, yeah, encoder, pre-persist, pre-update. Interesting. Register listener in your entity. Now attach show. Interesting. Add entity listeners include. Okay, that's interesting. Step 4, add bcrypt. Yeah, definitely add that one. How it works when GPA runs, pre-persist. Oh, by the way, in case you don't know, when I talked about there was something I talked about in the entity, which is a pre-persist. I don't know if I used the word pre-persist. This is it. Basically, this runs just before it updates the database, right? So you can do that within the same class itself. Right down here, you can do the pre-persist and then have a function on it. So basically, the pre-persist run. So if you even look at it, pre-persist before insert, right? Pre-update before update, exactly. It finds encrypted files. It finds an encrypted fields, read value, hashes with bcrypt, then replace field. So something like that. So DB store that. So that's good. Step 5, verifying password. What's this? Oh, AutoWire bcrypt. So we create a bin of that, of the bcrypt password encoder, which is AutoWire. Yeah, so that is okay. So I think we have our encrypt, or let's just say encrypted. I think it's a better name, encrypted, which is actually good since we're using it within the context. But I thought in my case, right, I'll actually use it in the, but now that I think about it, yes, it's actually nice to use it just at the entity level. I thought I'll use it at this level. Okay, immediately the password gets to, just as it reads and converts, it gets encrypted immediately. So I thought I wanted to use it, yeah, where is it? But again, that's expensive computations. Maybe some other checks will fail, so we don't want to put that there. And we only want to run that expensive computation maybe at the end, only when it is completely needed. So we have the encrypted, and I think there's a documentation. I documented, and actually I have no idea what this. If this annotation is present on the declaration of an annotation interface A, then any annotation at A annotation on an element is considered part of the element's public contract. In more details, when annotation interface A is annotated with documented, the presence and value of A annotations are a part of the public contract of the element A. Conversely, if annotation interface B is not annotated with documented, the presence and value of annotation B are not part of the public contract of the element B annotated. Concretely, if annotation interface is annotated with documented. By default, a tool like JavaDoc will display annotations of that interface. Okay, I see in its output why annotation. Okay, I see it. Okay. All right, so again we have the encrypted with the, and then we have the encryption listener, which will be, I think this, I don't even know where to put this again. I think, essentially we should like, I don't know, maybe we have like improve or annotation, improve, right? Maybe because like there are multiple different annotations, and I would really like, so listeners security.list. Oh, so that would be really nice to be under security. Mm. Oh, what am I doing? And what actually, let me see. I do have, sorry, I am refactoring while I'm there. Just, at least you can take a thing or two. I have all of these annotations here. I just feel like, but there are two ways of arranging your repository. I could move all of these into the entity method, that's the user. So basically, but this is not, I'm not doing the feature based design, because the feature base is I will have a user and then the controller of that user, everything that user is going to be inside, but this is not feature based. So in this case, I think it's proper to put it here, annotations, because here in the security, we definitely do have the require role, which it is in the security file, I think under interceptors, OA, yeah, and that's the aspect, and I think that should even, I should even move that annotation here. It makes sense. And then the not contained, which is our annotation, is under validation. I should move all of that in there. But then where will all of the other ones lie? Or I should just move all the implementations from these OAs right up there. For now, again, I could basically just restructure all of these based on what I want. But for now, we'll keep it here. It's not the best place. I don't think it's the best place. But just for same purposes, we are going to keep it there. Bcrypt, we have not added bcrypt, but we have a dependency. And it will basically be, there we go, bcrypt, and we need to go to our com file, and we have a vulnerability here found in dependency blah blah blah, transitive asset J has external entity. Okay, you can look into that later. Also, one part of the vulnerability is just why we are here, we're talking security. This is very important for you to take a look at. Okay, whenever you come to your dependencies and you see, especially Spring definitely highlights vulnerability. You want to go and actually read what all of this is talking about. Where is it? I don't know. You read what the issue is about, okay? So that you should understand whether or not where you are. So let's just say you can read all of these. If untrusted XML input is processed by tone of this method, an attacker could read arbitrary local files via file. So basically, so in essence, they can use this vulnerability to read your files, so your etc files, your etc file path, and other application configuration file. Perform server-side requests, SSRF, via HTTP and HTTPS. So this is what the request is talking about. So you see, users of affected version should, in order of preference, replace its XML equals to that with XML unit, upgrade to version, or avoid using is right. So basically, if you are using, so what they're saying is that, you see, the vulnerability is here. So we're using the Spring Boot Data JPA, right? Spring Boot Data JPA test. So if anywhere in your code, if you're using this method, okay, this character sequence, right, they have deprecated it in favor of this particular method, XML unit, or this particular thing here. Or better still, you just upgrade to 3.227. So what we are going to try to do here is upgrade. So I'm thinking, what version am I using? Upgrade to 3.2. So I'm in 3.27.6. So I could do version here. I think version, right? And what I can do is 3.27.7. Okay. And try to load that. Oh, sorry, that is not where that's supposed to go. Okay, yep. That was a pretty much bad case. The scope. Yeah, so the thing that's supposed to go. Hold on, what's happening here? Where's my vulnerability? So on which one was it? Okay, it was on, yeah. So we have that. So just before the scope, we can do version. Oh, wait, let me see, starter. I might just clear out that dependency and then, so that at least you should get the latest version, or does it still come with the older version? Let me see if I remove this, I comment this out and I load yes, and then we have another vulnerability here for the web framework MVC, which if we look at show detail 3.27, same thing. I think it's same vulnerability, same issue. Yeah, same issue. Again, they could get your password. So I think it is actually just the Spring Starter, which is pulling from the lesser versions, and not exactly sure how to, because I think if I do that, okay, so we have that all there. So I don't know if that will initial. Oh, so the vulnerability, it still comes back, and the version, they say I cannot get this version. Okay, and yeah, try to run. Okay, I think I'm still going to get like an error here. Yeah. So they say you cannot get the version at the repository. Usually it's false. Again, I don't want to really be going to try to clean all the dependencies, and I don't know if it's validate. I always used to forget if it is validate or verify. I'm not sure which one it is, but verify. Is it? It should be verified. And I think we're going to have the same problem here. We want to like do the versioning here particularly. Yeah, and we're supposed to update to another version. Yeah. Again, yeah, same problem, same issue. Yep. But either way though, I'm not going to try to resolve this now. This is going to extend the video quite significantly. But again, you just have to read the vulnerability and you make sure that you follow the suggested methods, like upgrade it to Maven. Normally, I think we have cached the what I think if we start a new project, we should not have this vulnerability because it's going to automatically pull from the latest version. But because we already loaded what's happening? Because we already loaded the dependency, what happens is that when I remove it and I comment it and I put it just loads from the cache or older projects. And so if you're like starting a new project, like you go on the Spring Initializer, it should get the latest version of the Spring Starter Web MVC test and then the JPA test, but also you should try to make sure that you show the details and you read the entire vulnerability here. Because most often than you imagine, this is a very common route where attackers use to get access to your system, and it is so select dependency view. What's happening? Security analysis. Stop working. Okay, so I have no idea what just happened, but yeah. But in a nutshell, yeah, in a nutshell, you just go through or you read it as we have done, right? So you can even read more, which should take you to, well, oh, come on. I think we need some kind of plugin to be able to do that. But I thought that would take you to the website. This with more stuff. But again, when you read it, they will tell you, right? So you should in order for preference, replace that with that, right? And then you upgrade to this version, or you completely avoid using this particular method call or this class, okay, with untrusted inputs, right? So basically they are telling you validate your inputs because someone can use like we see like a path, like we saw, I think a lightweight path or lightweight directory injection. Is that how they call it? Yeah, with path injection to gain access to unauthorized path in your system, like the etc password and other things. Configurations can be changed, and before you know it, someone has access to your entire system. So again, although I've taken time to talk about this, I think it was worth mentioning. It is something that you should resolve, definitely. In my case, I'm not using this, except the Spring implementation itself is using it. If not, then the best version is to update these two versions. And just I know this is coming late, but although we are using all of these, when you're creating your POM file, avoid allowing the system to decide which version you are using. Okay, always add your versions to your dependencies so that it's reproducible. So if you transfer your code to someone after a long time, what happens is that they are working with exactly the same version of dependencies. And in this case, we are having problem because we we are automatically doing the pooling. I think if we did the versioning when we're putting all of these, right, like we did down here, we have the versions. It will be easier for us to just change the version. But right now we have Breaking Marvin code. I think maybe most likely my ID. But again, you just have to like put the version there and then you try. But if you go to data test JPA, if you just go like to let's go to Google. Internet is slow, so that will take time. But if you go to Marvin Central, you should see the dependency there, and you should see the latest version of Spring. Or you go to Spring IO, but if they're saying that you should use this version, then this version is most likely available. But again, the version is in this. I think it is in this version 3.18, and will be removed right in version 4. So right now they've released a patch which comes with the version 3.27.7, which should be the best choice for it until version 4 comes out, before that will tackle that completely. But yeah, internet is disturbing, so again, you can go through them and just follow the recommendations and avoid allowing dependencies to take security. All right. Again, simple tips when using dependencies: always add version. It allows for consistency and makes it easy to upgrade your versions. Okay. I didn't do that here again. That was terrible of me, but at least I'm saying it now. So where were we? We've added bcrypt. We have resolved the dependency for bcrypt, which is Spring Spring Security Crypto, right? And we have user, we have the username, we have encryption. So we can include bcrypt here, and we have the bcrypt. We have the pre-persist, we have the pre-update. Again, what is happening is that we are reading the field of the entity class. So when we get the field of the entity class, if the field is annotated with this encrypted class, then we want to set the field accessible to be true, allowing us to access the content within the field. Then we are going to create an object with a value and get this particular field, right? And what is going to happen is, so we're going to get the value of that, and we're going to check if value is not equal to null, if it's string raw, so we're going to get the value and store it in a raw string. Then we're going to now to prevent double hashing, so we're going to check if that field has already been encrypted. If it has not been encrypted, then we're going to encrypt it, right? And then we're going to set the field back, the information back to the field, right? So that's what all of this code does. And then we're just catching exceptions here: illegal access exception, encrypted field for field, blah blah blah, and runtime. Okay, and basically runtime is a 500 exception. But you don't have to. If there's a part you can catch an exception, and then again, you can catch an exception and do whatever you want to do with it here. But this one, if the field fail to encrypt, we don't want to save it like that. So we want to make sure that we throw an internal server error, because that's what our runtime exception does. That said, yeah. Okay, and what that would do is encrypt the field, and rather than putting our encrypt here, right, we can now go to our model. Where is this? Where is it? Sorry, which is our user, and in our password field, we can use now our encrypted annotation, which basically encrypts password if not encrypted. Okay. But also someone can just pass in an encrypted password and then of a particular, where again is going to be set as a string, and we don't really care. Essentially, we don't want to trust user input, so I think this implementation of encrypted, but this is for us. Yeah, So this particular check checks if it has already been encrypted. But do we really want to check if it's already been encrypted? No, we just want to encrypt the password. Right? It doesn't matter if the user already encrypted. We're considering the password as the raw password. Again, there might be scenarios where you want to check for this particular method, but for now, we don't want to do that. Okay. Yeah, we just want to check raw password. We just want to encrypt the password raw. So you can prevent double hashing, which is true. But say, let's just say for this case, since we're just getting input from the user, we're just going to do this particular simple encryption. And that will prevent scenarios where a user is going to send an already encrypted password and then will fail to encrypt it again. It doesn't, maybe might not look at the surface of causing a problem, but again, we don't want the user to detect our behavior of our system. We want that if the user sends an encrypted password, each time the user sends a password, it is encrypted. Right? He has to send the encrypted version of whatever password he sends because we are doubly encrypting it. And that is it, right? So that will be what we are doing now, and I think that's all for the annotations. Okay, so what have we done here? So it's already like 36 minutes gone. So we are the registered method and we are taking register user, and we need to now change this method to now take register. It should be like registered user instead of users, right? And we could, just get it from the what's happening here? No. I'm trying to get like a user service. User service. Oh, I thought there was. Oh, there is no. Sorry, there is no interface. So there's no providers interface. So what this is going to do is what we have to do is map the user, because this takes the user entity and now we're passing our register user. So no, actually we're supposed to turn token JWT token, yeah. And what this is going to take is register user, and yeah. And what this is going to happen, we can have again, we have in our utility, we have a mapper. Do we have a mapper validator? We can have a mapper here, right? Can it be in our service? Yeah. You can put in a utilities or in the service layer, right? You can have a mapper. Basically, it's like an interface. We did it like to DTO to entity, right? And basically, we can do. If we already did this, I think we did this somewhere. Validator. I think we did it. Mapper. There we go. So we have user mapper, and basically these two, entity, DTO, and so on. Okay. Again, this is very, let me put it this way, we could use, in order for it to make it general, we could use reflection to read the DTO class and see available field and only map the available field pair with respect to the DTO class. This will allow us or prevent us from creating multiple different mappers for multiple different DTOs, like now I'm about to do. Register user mapper, and again, this is just boilerplate code a lot, and this will implement mapper, which is going to get update, not update user. So user, and this is going to get register user, right? And this is going to implement the methods, which is going to be to DTO and to entity. And what this is going to do is just going to build our. Do we have our builder in our user entity, in our entity class? Let's look at it. We do not have the builder there. I actually love to use the builder. Add builder. just better for me. And our register class, we have the builder there, we have the builder there. So we have our user mapper, our register user mapper, and what we can do is to DTO, in this case we want to do to entity first since it's what we're going to use. So we're returning an entity, or at least, yeah. Okay, so in this case we can, let's see, we are sending a user. We're sending the user which is an entity. We can just go, okay, so we don't need a builder here. We can just user, let's set email now. So this is good. User dot set first name. Yeah. And then so okay, so this is like a register. User dot set last name. User dot set email. User dot set password. User dot set role, which is DTO dot get. Now we are not setting role here. Dot set username. There we go. And I just put them in order, which is good. So you have first name, last name, username, email, password, and so the last one is role, which is going to be set role method. Okay, and this is going to allow us to define the role per implementation. And if we're converting it back to DTO, basically we'll just build a DTO. Right? So we have the user entity, and what's happening here? Alright, so normally this is supposed to return a DTO object. Since we're not having two arguments here, we just have the entity, so it's supposed to return like the DTO. So like request, is a register request. And so in a mapper, we can just put on the DTO, which is you. And this is going to have one problem in the implementation, which is definitely going to be update user. Yeah, there we go. And just like that, that should fix things. I'm going to return null just in case, just to remove the error there. And so we should not break things. And then we have the user set role that's in the controller. So in the mapper here, we're going to have register user, and we're going to build dot builder, right? And dot build basically that's the methods. So we're going to have dot set. So dot username. So first name is equals to entity dot first name. So dot last name. Again, that's if you want to convert back, but technically you will not want to convert back to this exactly, right? Because you're then releasing the password, and then you're then releasing the password, and you're then releasing something else. So you may even want to extract this method to be two different things. Again, this is essentially what I wanted to do here is last name, set like last name to that, and dot username again, right? But then again, you have an extra field which is not being implemented when returning. So we're not returning registered user, right? We're just returning a token in this case. But in the case of, say, we want to return a registered user, you don't even want to have the password field present, right? Although in this case, if we leave it like this, which is advisable, then the password field and the email field, they are not present, right? They are empty or null, right? So, but in reality, you don't even want to allow them have access to this field. You want to simply make sure that they don't have access to this. And this is what I talk about. And what you can do is you can remove this method and create its own its own mapper class. Essentially, you can do, instead of a mapper, you can just do a mapper. You can just do two objects, right? And essentially, you can then have like a two classes implementation. So you can have like a register user to user mapper, and then you have the reverse, which is the user mapper to register so you can have the user to register user mapper, which basically converts the user back to a DTO. And so you can create another DTO, which could be the returned register user, right? That just returns just the first name, the last name, and maybe the email, depending on the kind of input you want. And so that restricts responses and allow just for you to return the right response. But this is for now, this is okay, right? And so I'm just going to return that. Right? So for now, this is okay. And essentially, when we are passing it back, we can just pass first name, last name, and stuff. If ever we're ever going to return that object, but I just wanted to do that implementation to highlight that point. I hope that's clear. If not, then you watch the video, ask the questions in the description below, and I make a complete video for it. And so what this does is that we have our register user. We can now just create our new. So we can click user equal to new user. Right. What's happening here? Okay, so what we can do is we can have register user here, yes, and so this now becomes our user, or you can probably just leave out to user and DB user, but let's just put this our user, our new user, and you can just put the user dot builder dot build, and we can set the role dot role, and this could be this I think be user, right? And that is going to give you an empty user class with the role set, and this allows us to now pass in. So basically we can call the user mapper, so we can call the mapper here, so we can call the user mapper, sorry, so entity, this is going to take our user and our register user. This is a DTO, right? Okay, so this is taking access. Again, problem, because now we need to have multiple mappers. As you see, we have user, and now we have to have like register user. You can set a qualifier, but it's not just, it's really just confusing. But if you use Java reflection, then you can tailor it to, you know, do the necessary inputs and avoid a lot of complication. I don't know if it's like a good practice to do that, but you know, you can do that. And now the error is gone, and basically this is passed as a so just a small feel like it's a class once it's like big so this is pass, so this is an object, so it's passed in terms of the reference, so whatever update we do there is always going to stay there. So after that we can simply just save the user. Alright, so we set the role already up there, and orm.save, what happened here? Okay, so we are returning this. So again, in this class, okay, so what I wanted to do is have the private, I think, where's the method for JWT? So we have a security in the auth context. We have our JWT, which is our provider. Yeah, JWT token provider. So we're going to auto wire in token provider here. Auto wire JWT there, and we're going to have JWT token provider, and in here, where is it? Just before we save to the, so after we've saved to the user, okay, where is it? And this is something that you also want to make sure. I think at this point where is it? That's our register user. At this point, you may want to annotate this with like a transactional. I think that's Spring Framework or Jakarta annotation. I don't know which one is used most. Yeah, I don't know if like we're going to Spring or Jakarta. But what I want to do is make sure that all of these methods run or non-run at all. You don't want to save a user, because one thing we want to do is save the user to the database, right? So when we save the user to the database, then, because generate token which takes in auth user, right? And the auth user comes with ID, username, and role. So you definitely need the ID of that, right? So the safe user have the ID there, and what you want to do is auth user equals to equals to new auth user that get ID. There we go. And dot get role. What's happening? Requires set of string. So we have like set of. So you can have like set dot off. Obviously, when you're putting your role, it's supposed to be set. In this case, we put it as a normal role, so we have to add the set of there. So, but you don't have to do that. Again, it's all a design. When we started, we designed this poorly, but it was just for practice. But when you're actually doing your users, it's mostly advisable. Especially if you're doing role based and where a user can have multiple roles at the same time, do you want to use set? But in this case, we have just a string as our role, so we have to create a set of that particular role. And what happens is that we create a new auth user here, and then we use the JWT token provider dot generate token, right? So we can generate. So what this does is, let me see, what does it return? So it generates a JWT token. So we can return, right, a JWT token, which is going to return two tokens, which is your access and your, so it returns a JWT token, which is going to return your access and your, so you look at the JWT token, your access and your refresh token. So this takes in two parameters, which is the user, which is the auth user, and returns a JWT token. If you look at it again, it takes in the auth user and the duration and time. So that's not actually what we are doing. This is the one that we are calling actually. This is what we are calling. Right, this is generate token. This, on the other hand, generate token is private, so we are not calling this one. This is what we are calling, and this just takes in the auth user. And what happens again? I think I explained all of this in the other class. It just calls in that generate token, regenerates the access and the return token and the refresh token, and sends it to us as your login should do. And we're just going to pass in auth user there, right? And we're going to return that. And basically, this is our sign up, right? So again, we so implement the registration here. So what happens is that we build our new user and we convert it to convert our registered input to our entity. That's after validation. You can implement your validation logic in the DTO class and your custom validations, as we have seen in previous videos. And then we save the user to make sure that we get a user now with an ID, and we're putting this as transactional to make sure that all of these methods run, all of them run, including the generate. if either all of them run on one. So if say during the run process this does not go right, it rollbacks all of them. I don't know if this is supposed to be like from Jakarta or from JWT or from Spring. But again, there is really no. I hate this thing because there is no annotation. There is no documentation to give us the information. But transactional allows for implementation of atomic behavior, which I spoke in part of my videos. So you can rewatch them. That would be, I don't know, I think a couple of videos. Sorry, a couple of videos behind. Anyway, so when we save it to our database, we now generate our auth user, right? Again, you can use like the builder, whatever you want to use, but this one we're just going simple way of generating it. And then we generate the token, and this returns a JWT token, which we are returning. And what simply does this, what does this do is going to return back to the controller, and then it's going to return a token. So in our postman, if we do register user, we should get 2 tokens, right? And that's the idea. So if we try to run that, hopefully there is no error. I'll going to see. Yeah, so we are running successfully. There's no error. So if we try to, we don't have any authentications. So what we need to do is that so we have basic auth, okay, and sorry, we have basic auth. From our last video, we have like basic auth one, but we're not supposed to have any authentication here. But what I'm saying is that right now, again, we're mixing up a lot of things, but it's because we're just teaching, and I hope this makes sense. But from our last video, from the videos we're talking about protection, we saw URL and how we changed the URL. So in our file, we looked at private, right? We saw how we have changed it to private, and that's simply to protect against I think the request path allows us to do public and private path, so we can authenticate different authentication. We can use different authentication methods to authenticate based on path, and that's why we have private here. So this private, according to if you look at the auth that we built in our filter, when we meet this, right, it should authenticate. Okay, so like path-based authentications, something like that. I don't know if you saw that, but essentially, if we wait, is it? Oh, okay. So it is in our our interceptors. I'm a bit confused. We implemented this in interceptors. I don't think we implemented it. It's what I'm supposed to talk about today, which basically takes into account the path, right? Because in our filter and our authentication, where is it? In our filter, we have auth, which does not take into consideration path. It just takes into consideration the authentication type. And if none is set, then it's going to check if it's a private. So if you go to public, right, it checks if none is set, it just returns true, and then it checks if it's a public endpoint. So it checks if it starts with this. But as you can see, our controller does not start with that. It has private A instead. So it's going to compare it. So what happens is that if we don't set an authentication, it's going to return with an unauthorized. So if I try and do no auth, and I try to send this unauthorized, right? So I need an authentication, right? So basic authentication, and we have a previous user, which you're not supposed to do this. So I'm going to try to. What I would do is change our URL back to public, right? So, and we start the application. That way, we've made all of these access point public, right? But again, these access points are not supposed to be public. Just I think the register and the logins are supposed to be public endpoints. So this one you probably need, so this ones you use you use require authentication or something like that to check for the role, right? So this is where interceptors will play a um, very big step. So if I change that to public and I put no auth, then we should get, oh, we still get unauthorized. Oh, sorry. So it's public here. There we go. Change that to public. So mapper to entity object because register mapper is null. Also, our register mapper here, it's a service class, so we have so Spring is not so we can like we can put like component or service. I think it's service class, so you can put service there. So Spring is not picking that up, so it's not initializing it properly. Okay. So we can also put the flag here to allow Spring to pick up which mapper, but it's not a problem since we have, where's our user service, since we have we define the generics that are being used. Where is it? Yeah, we defined it inside here, so we don't need to put a qualifier there. Right, it's already defined there. But again, so if we try one more time, okay. So again, same problem. Not sure what's happening now because this dot register mapper is null. Let's try that again. I'm not certain that 500 internal server error. Oh, auto wire in. Sorry. Auto wire. Yeah. So, by the way, like I spoke earlier, as you can see, we're having a lot of issues. So, the best thing to do is simple. You want to make all of this final and use, what is it? So, we want to use require constructor, and you make all of your private final, all of them, final classes, final. Oh, so we also have a problem here. We did not define the scope, which is private final. Again, very important, private final. Right, and same thing here, final. And same thing here, final. And validator, same thing, final. Okay. And so that allows us to, so we're going to remove that qualifier because it's not much needed there. And allow us to remove all the auto wires because, well, they are now just redundant. Okay. The require acts constructor does constructor injection and allow us to have the same behavior. Okay. So if we run the code, nothing should go wrong. Let's try again and see. There we go. Now you've seen our two tokens, our access token and our request token. Okay. I explained all of this in the last class, and we have our two tokens. So now when we are sending a request, say we want to send a request here, let's say the role, okay. Sorry. We want to send a request to the update. So I'm going to create our access token, which lasts about 15 minutes. We want to use it on our put, right? So our put has a body. Again, this is not best of information. So let's say our get, sorry, our post. Again, we just have the token, we don't even have the user information. So our put data, we are updating. For now, this is not the best design, and I'm about to do it, but again, it's just for demonstration, to demonstrate interceptors rather than how you should design this, okay? Because what I'm about to do is use the key for this user to update another user's information, which is not supposed to happen. Again, it is very important you implement validations, such as making sure that only a user can update his own information. Okay, so for now, what we can do is, so we want to update Sam at ID1, first name and last name. We want to put that Samuel, right? So, oh, the Sam logo, Samuel logo, whatever. I'll add Samuel. There we go. And for the authorization, now we want to pass barrier, which now is supposed to show us a JWT, and we want to pass that, right? And if we send this in, that should grant us unauthorized. It says unauthorized. We are passing in a barrier token. Authentication required. Okay, so let's debug that. So JWT, I think that is in parsers. The token is not being issued. Is valid if JWT token is token blacklisted. So we're going to check valid here. I'm going to call a function. We're going to check the if function here. And essentially, I think if I do that, yes, the filter catches it and sends it here. And if it's not valid, then we want to return false, right? And so the valid here is this. So it's valid. So we're going to, which comes here, and it's asking, is JWT token blacklisted? Okay. If it's token blacklisted, long dot remove. If it's equals to null, you return true. So I'm supposed to see something like that. Yes. So we have remover. Yeah, so removal time is equal to null, so you should have it down here. No, you should have it down here. What's happening? Alright, so it returns that. That's wrong. Let me see, it says if token is valid and JWT token valid. So it says token is valid. No. Return false. That's weird. No, let's try that again. I don't understand the flow of that. So it asks the question, authenticator, is token valid? And that plays into is valid, right? And it plays into is token blacklisted. So we should, if token is in blacklist, so we're going to try. Oh, sorry, you cannot put a breakpoint and try. I'm going to try to pass the token. So we're going to get there. And the question is, it's null, right? So this all is skipped. Oh, okay, I see. So, oh, okay, I see. Token not found. So token is not blacklisted. It's token blacklisted. So this is supposed to be true. So that was a design error here. So if token is blacklisted, So if remove time is not equal to null, which means that token is not found, right? So it's supposed to be true. Token is not blacklisted, and so I think that's the problem there, right? So if we try that, oh sorry, we have to restart the application. We have to restart the application. So as you see, those are design flaws, those are implementation flaws, sorry, logic flaws. Because I was asking if token is blacklisted, and basically it tried to extract the removal time from the token. And if you are unable to extract the removal time from the token, which every token has, that means there is literally no token in the blacklist that matches the token. And so if there is no token in the blacklist, all of this does not implement, and so the token is not in the blacklist, and so token should be valid at least for the blacklist check. And instead I was returning false here because I thought something else. So if we try to send that again, you press play, and it is going to return true. Is JWT blacklisted? Oh, hold on. Yeah, no, actually, it's not blacklisted, sorry. What am I doing? Oh, so is token, the question is token blacklisted, which is false? Sorry. Once again, we are about to oh, so it's not yet run. The application is still starting. There we go. So it's token blacklisted false. All of that doesn't run. This runs. It comes down there, yes, and then it goes back to JWT token. I'll come back here. Yeah, it skips that, and I'll try to pass the token, which is going to be in the parser. So it calls a pass method, and what it's trying to do is checks for the sign bit. I said my key is not exactly the same. So the token dot key dot whatever it is. So secret key spec 124. That's interesting. Key hash, key prop, get secret or get bytes. Oh, I think it's yeah. Alright, so I think the implementation it's a bit off for the key, but I think the issuer should be good. Yeah. So the key, I think the key verification is what is the problem here. And that's why we are getting the unauthenticated. Let me see. So we pass it, we check for key, we check for props, the issuer. So what's my properties? JWT properties. Secret, issuer, access token, refresh token time. And we have our YAML file which will define our configurations here. Our JWT secret, the issuer, social access token, refresh token. Going to leave. That's the prefix configure security.jwt. Yes. And our parser is going to take in the key. Okay, so just going to go ahead and remove all the breakpoints for now. Actually, yeah, I'll just remove the breakpoints for now. Let me see. So that's our secret, right? Props we have. So the key. Oh, props will get issued. Okay, all right. Oh, the key. Okay, the key is not. I think because we have our secret here. Our secret is correct, right? We have our issuer, which is correct. Our access token, which is yes. Our request refresh token, which is correct, and I don't even know if the JWT exception is. I think the keys dot I should see props dot get secrets dot get bytes. Let's see how to sign the tokens. Provider. Oh, decoded key. Oh, come on. Alright, so we are using different, I think, algorithms here. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, we're using different algorithms here. So if I am correct, if I should, I will change this. Hold on. Somewhere here. Yeah, if I should change that, and start that again. I'm probably 15 minutes has passed, so that should, the expiry date or something should token expire. Expect expiry claim, yeah, so the expiry date has expired, so that's why. So what we are going to do is attempt to sign up again. So oh, actually we could use the refresh token. Okay, don't just to avoid signing up again, the refresh token is still valid, so we can use that for now. You don't have to use this twice. I'm just using it for this purpose. So to try that again, and in the pass claim, expected expiry claim to, it was, what's happening here? Okay, so I think I am checking the expiry time a little bit different. Normally they do this manually. So what's saying is expected expiry claims to be that, but 65. Ooh. Okay, so I think this one checks for strict expiry date. So what I can do is check for expiry. Where is it valid? Check for blacklist. So we can pass token. Is token blacklisted? We can pass token here, and we can check expiry. So we can do if I think let's say do we like time date. Get body. Yeah, I think that will be okay. If on new date, yeah, I return false. Also just return true. Yeah, and then we will remove this here. I think this is what makes it fail. Maybe I misunderstood that. Maybe I was checking for a particular time, but usually they do it manually. I thought anyway, let's see if that solved the problem. We are going to run that again and see if that, so not found, try get update. Yeah, so it passes. So what is happening is that we are using the private method here, so it's supposed to be public. Again, the URL, we changed that to public, and so if we do that, yeah, so it now works. So that passes perfectly. And yeah, that was because of the expiry. I don't know if I change this to the old one, does it work? Okay, yeah, so expiry has expired on that one too. So what's the exception? JWT expire at blah 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 current time. A different of, yeah. So which is interesting because you know what, this checks the expiry by default. I don't even need to set the, because the exception here it's gotten from the pass variable, and so when it passes it checks for expiry by default, and this expiry just sets it to false, so it's not supposed to throw an exception as you can see, but rather we're getting an exception of JWT token expired exception. So even if I think we were to comment this out, right, we are still going to get the JWT expired error, and that's actually pretty good because it saves us the trouble for checking it twice here. I hope, I truly do hope that, yeah, I think that's the case. And if we try that, we should get the, yeah, there we go, we get the exception. As you can see, it's the same exception, the JWT expiring, and we're not checking for expiring. So the pass method, when we attempt to pass, it checks the sign-in, it checks the issuer, and when we send to validate, it automatically does validate expiry. And you know, it checks against the current time, which is a very good automated implementation from Spring on the JWT team there, which is really good, and that saves us from this. But again, it does not harm to include it there, so we can just leave it there. But as you can see, again, we have our endpoint which has run successfully. And now, although this is taking a lot, now for the very important issue is interceptors, right? Like I explained in the last video, interceptors have to do with global, sectional, right? And so we can have different path interceptors that intercept requests based on the path. So right here I have some older implementations which I have to which I thought I used it to, yeah, let's see, let's look at it. Where is interceptors? There we go. And we have authentication interceptor, which was meant for authenticating, and this part I wanted to teach interceptor in terms of authenticating, then I said let me go with the filter method, which we did already. And this is just a recap. You can have you could put it there, but it's not advisable. Again, it's sectional. You should not put authentication there. Again, you see there are different calls implementation there, file uploads, interceptions. But now this is what is really interesting. If you're uploading file, rate limiting, rule interceptors, like auth.get context.role. And what you can do is, I think you can do request.get method path. Let me see, you can do request, I think request.get method, which is equal to, you can also do request.get request URL, which returns, I think, the path, right? So you can do dot equal to, and then you can do API.upload there, right? So what you can do with this particular line is that you can create, okay, you can create another interceptor. You could create here and do, let's say you want, for the file interceptor, you only want admin. Let me see. Okay, let me say for the update path, you want to make sure only registered users, right? Even though it's public, you want to make sure that only registered users, right, have access to it. So you could create come on. Sorry, I'm going to move this out of the way a little bit just so that I could create an interceptor, and I could create a update path interceptor, right? And this will extend, or I think it implements HandlerInterceptor. Did it extend or implements? Okay, it's implement, and then we have the two parts. We have three. We talked about the pre-handle and the post-handle, which takes the request, and we have we can have the at pre-handle. Is it pre-handle? Wait, hold on. Oh, so sorry, I was doing override. Yeah, so it's supposed to be override at pre-handle and then pre-handle. Sorry about that, a bit confused here. But Boolean, public Boolean pre-handle, this handles the request. It takes in the servlet request, HTTP servlet response, and the object handler, and then throws in an exception. So we have return handle, super, pre-handle, blah, blah, blah. If you look at the rule implementation, it's just basic, simple. So we have the object. And what we can do is we can check. Yeah, you can check again. Basically, they give us everything. You can check if it's a put request, and essentially, let me just go all of there. You can check if it's a put request to update endpoint, and then we can get the request methods. Again, we saw this. I just put it's a put request and get the request URL which matches API. And we want to do in this case version. Is it public first? Public. You have version 1. Right. You have update. Right. It depends on how you want to show it, right? Or you can have any kind of version number here, and I don't know how you probably do that. But for now, we just like API public version 1, which is our user controller. API public version 1, users, and then update. So we want to have users here. Version 1, users / update, right? Whatever this is. So when we get this endpoint, even if it just enter update, I want to perform every necessary check here, right? At this level, auth context is gone, it's already there, so we can definitely get So we can have private auth, which is auth context. I think for the rule we did rule required require rule. We save in the context. I did this somewhere. Rule interceptors, rule required move with limits. Oh, no, I think it will be authentication interceptor. No, that's not it. So we have the auth context here. Is it like context.get or context? I don't know. No, not get instance. Let me see. No, so like context. But once it's here, right, this is going to contain our user. The problem is I don't know if it's going to get the same. Is it going to get the same context? That's the thing. I want to see how I used it here. Authorization aspect. Yeah, there we go. Oh, what context would get? Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted to see. So, like, Interceptor, authorization aspect, what result, what context would get. Ah, so we use like the auth context. So, need me. Yeah, so auth result, which is what I wanted to get because we're getting the auth. The auth result contains our which is equals to auth context dot get. I think. But again, that's interesting because there we go. Yeah, so it was not okay. So we have and what this does is provide our user information, and so what we can do is now check rules, right? Basically, we want to check if. So we're going to check if auth result. First of all, it's already authenticated. Dot get auth, right? Dot has rule, and then we pass the rule. Let's say admin. Right. But we don't want to pass the role user for now, right? We just want to just pass the role admin, okay? And if it has role, then we return true. If it doesn't have role, then we're going to set a response forbidden, okay? So, and that's all. That's quite all of it, okay? And what this will do is that when we send, what's happening here? Update path, and we need to add this interceptor to the config, to the registrar, right? And where is it? Config. And we go to interceptor config, and we have all our interceptors here. And what we're going to do is also we already have the role interceptor, which I wanted to show you. I already showed you that. But what we can do is registry. So I will doing dot registry dot add interceptor, which is going to be new interceptor, and then right. For now, that's like basic, I think, right? So if we rerun this, hopefully, if we send that request again and we don't have the admin role, then we should get a forbidden. Okay, so at least that is the hope. Okay, now if we send update request, we try. Okay, we have the JWT exception that runs. So it actually does the work without any issue. So that did not work. JWT, no, we're not looking at the JWT there. And the application, we already solved that problem. We already solved this problem. So let's get rid of the JWTs. Public endpoints, user services, we get rid of that. JWT provider, request mapper, mappers, update request. We already took care of that. Register user, we took care of that. Encrypted, took care of that. Encrypted listener, took care of that. Bonfire, users, and JWT token. Rate limiting interceptor, role interceptor. We'll look at that in a few seconds. File upload interceptor, user controller, update path, yes, interceptor config, and auth interceptor. Authorization aspect. Alright, so yeah, I thought so. What is happening is that here it is supposed to take the path. So I think rather than do this here, which is weird, we are supposed to do this here. Dot add path. Right, something like so. Yes, something like that. And actually, in here, we don't need to do this check again. So, what can we do? Dot add path patterns. So we can check if the request is a put request, right? Obviously. So we can allow that put request there. So with this, hopefully that should work. Right. Except of course our user is an admin, but I'm not sure our user was an admin. Let's check our user. Maybe we were sending in the body. The user was just a user. Again, we are putting it just there. So request, you send that. It works. That has rule admin. If it doesn't, then we respond to false. No, we simply just apply to false. So if it is not, so the method that gets put, let's see if first of all that that picks up the handle. I think that's the first thing we need to check. Sorry. So we will run that. That was the first thing I'll actually need to check if the interceptor is actually being picked up. So which in my case here I am serious doubt. Yeah, it's not being picked up, which is not good because I don't think. So let's look at interceptors. My previous implementations. Am I failing to get some things? HandlerInterceptor, private string has role, public blah blah blah, role via role, that's a constructor, and create via true. Is there anything? Okay. Interceptor configuration. Maybe the path, just maybe I am not setting the appropriate path. So API public version 1 users update. API public version 1 users update. Oh yeah, so it's now picking up. So it was not a problem of where I was placed. I think it's a problem of my path. I was putting in the wrong path. Or less. So what's happening? Sorry, again, is that we are targeting this particular update path, and we're implementing an interceptor. And before it even hits the controller, the interceptor will intercept the request and run this check. And so if we continue the running of the check, you see it's not going to hit it's not going to hit true because this is false, right? It doesn't have method admin, and so it's going to return false. Cannot invoke auth result dot get auth because this dot auth result is null. So we have an error. This dot auth result is null. No as constructor, you can have add component. So we can have this here. Actually, oh, because we're doing private here. If we just do nothing. I think if we just do the normal auth result, that will be okay. Right, auth is just a variable that is getting the auth context, and so all of this should be correct. Dot get or dot has role. So if we try that again, also the same problem. 500 internal server error. Okay, so that's a Spring issue. So it's saying that it cannot invoke our auth result of get auth because auth result itself is null. So this class does not have a constructor. Right, so we have private, right, private auth, right. Sorry, I see what's happening here. And what is happening is that we have not initialized a constructor, which is a constructor of this class, which is public update path auth result. No, it's a no arguments constructor, and All we're going to do is just auth result equals to auth context dot get. Okay, and that should initialize our auth result. Yeah, and auth result should be fine now since it is immutable. So we're not changing the auth result. We just want to use it. So we make it fine now to be immutable, and that should solve our problem. And that's because we're missing a constructor here. Again, these are common flaws when designing. These are not like catastrophic bugs. So if we try to send it again, it's saying the same thing, auth result of get, and that's interesting. Auth result, private final auth result. Why is it saying this dot auth result is null? So the context is null. Huh. We set context here. So forgive me for what context dot get, return context dot get, and context thread save. So for this particular thread, context has not been set. You think that based on the aspect, annotation require role, we get the auth context. What context is this? It's a static final, static methods, but clear. So anyone can get it, right? And we set auth context. So auth result equals to auth context.get, and I'm setting out the context here. So I don't know why I'm having, because during my validation, during my authentication, if we go to filter, auth filter, and after we authenticate, after we support the request, we authenticate, and then we set the auth context, then we do the filter chain, right? Auth context or set auth context, and then we do the filter chain. We have not yet cleared auth context yet. The request is still being processed. So we do the filter. So this runs after the request has run, I assume. So in this, when it's at the path, the auth context should still be set. But in this case, it is null, which is why it's giving us the error. Yeah. So I'm going to need some help, because I'm intercepting the request and I'm getting the auth context. me ask GPT for help. Oh, I see. No need, no need. So, I don't, wait, hold on. All right, so, here is the problem. Okay, there is a bit of an issue. All right, I think I know what's wrong. Well, I'm not at asked GPT, but while I was writing the question, I realized my implementation. So it's hitting it quite all right, okay? And what we're trying to do is get the auth context. Now, the auth context is only set when it has to authenticate, all right? But remember, during our validation, right, we are checking the endpoints. I think, is it? Hold on. Hold on. Let me see if I get that correctly. So in our, no, that's not our filter. In our filter, when we authenticate, sorry, what's happening here? When we authenticate, we check for support, right? And each support, oh, so our request, yeah, but no, actually, our request is taking the JWT barrier token. Yeah, so our request is taking the JWT. So we're sending in alongside the the barrier token, right? Yeah. So actually, so it's not what I'm thinking. Okay, no. Because I was thinking that we're not sending it with anything and we're getting it with path. Then we bearer token, we authenticate, and then we set context. Hold on, let me check something. And we set context, which is result, and that will be JWT, and that will be JWT authenticator, and it definitely validates. And what happens is it sends with a true auth user, and then at the auth filter, auth, so it gets the auth.authenticate request. Result that is authenticated, auth context is set result. So let me see if when we send a request it hits that particular endpoint. Yeah, it does. Okay. And what I want to check is the result. And the auth is null. Alright, so that is definitely the problem. Yeah, so it's in the JWT authenticator, which is the problem. And the auth is null. So what we are doing here, we are sending auth, which is auth user. The auth user is equals to new user, which is user ID. And that is interesting because it's user ID, JWT.password extract user token. Which is weird, okay? Because like I said, auth filter at this stage is authenticated, and that's true, and authenticate, and the result comes out true and auth null. That is where JWT auth user. So auth user equals to new auth user, and why is it showing me null here? So except it's not being returned. Yeah, so let's check extract user. User details. Yeah. So you're going to have an endpoint there, and yeah, I'm going to check that actually. Yeah, I see that, and I'm going to do that again. So we have the filter chain, right? So we have the result, and the auth is null. Huh. Result is authenticated. So authenticate request, that will be implemented by the JWT authenticator, which will have the authenticate request. And how do you get a true and a null? So definitely this particular part is not being hit, and what is happening here is if token is not valid, then what is happening? I think that somewhere in this valid, in the parser, we are having some kind of issue. Yeah, because the authenticator is supposed to, at least I should get like the breakpoint is set here, I should get a hit here. So this section of code is not running at all. Okay, so we are returning a true and a null. And this is very important because this doesn't create any new user. None of these functions create new users. So essentially I should see a return somewhere around here if I try that. Try that again. So you get a return here, right? And this basically sends it in the authenticator. So is JWT valid? So it is not valid, right? How does it skip all of that? Okay, so let's play that again. Ooh. So is JWT valid returns false? And okay, so I see it returns false. Oh, I think it's the token that we sorry. So what I'm thinking is the token has expired. So maybe so I think the token has expired, and when we did the copy and paste thing, sorry about that. So we should do the refresh token, which is the update. We should queue that particular request, and then we should have that actually. And yeah, it's token required. Yes, and then that returns true. And now, yeah, there we go. So we have our result. Where is it? So result is not set yet. Our result is true, and our authenticated user. There we go. And so context is now set. And auth.getContext, yeah, it's set context now. So that's what I wanted to see. So it's not a bug, it's not an implementation problem, it's just me teaching and made a fatal error that I forgot completely. And yeah, so again, we still have the same problem. So now we should try to see if we get context. We're setting the context, and what is happening is that we've set the context properly, right? And So let's check that again. So we are setting a context, auth context, this JWT authentication filter. We set the context, okay, and we do filter. And what we want to do is in our update, right? We're supposed to be able to get the context, right? So we want to put a breakpoint somewhere there, and then we just send the same thing. So it's token valid. We're going to skip all of that. Okay, so the context result, right? And that's auth user number 7, John Doe, and role is user, right? So we've set the context there. And before it hits here, it has to hit the interceptor first. Yes, it hits the interceptor, and we are supposed to now see auth user is showing null. So the context, it's unable to get the context, which is okay. That's a bit, I don't know. Auth user is null, so it's auth filter. So what I would do is I'm going to check something, request. So we're going to get like auth user result. I will just put like variable. Let's put like variable auth user equals to auth context dot get, right? So I want to see if it's a problem just beyond me, right? So I'm going to rerun that code again. Okay. So the context definitely is not, it's being set, but it is not empty. And yeah, it's getting the context, right? So you see it gets the context, it set the context and it gets the context. However, we're using, so except that it's using a different thread, again, because we're using threads, I thought the request would be running in the same thread, because if you see the auth context, we're using local threads, allowing each of the thread to have its own variable. Okay, and I thought it had the same thread, because when we continue, now the auth context is empty here, which is not supposed to be empty. Now we have like result, which is null. So you're getting auth context. So I thought it was like the same thread. So yeah, let me consider asking GPT. Maybe I'm getting wrong again. I'm trying to call the interceptor when I send a put update endpoint. However, auth context keep returning null. My suspicion is that a different thread takes control when it gets to the interceptor. Because if it is the same thread, then auth context dot get will get the save auth context. I tried getting the context at the filter just setting it and it got the populated user. So right now I need you to explain the bug and possible solutions. So error sorry. Right, code filter. So we'll get our auth filter. Which authenticate the request and then sends it now to the interceptor config, which will register the interceptors. I don't know if that will have anything to do. I doubt that should have anything to do with it. Let's just provide that particular code. By the way, you're not supposed to be putting all your code to ChatGPT. Again, this is just a practice and you do it. Good question. This is a classic Spring filter and as a thread local lifecycle bug, and your intuition is close, but the main issue is not actually thread difference. So the real bug calls update path. What happens here is created an application startup outside any. Oh, okay, I see. So before authentication happens, it's called. So, oh, all right. I did not think of it that way. Therefore, yeah. So that's true, and it stays not forever since it's final. That's true. So we should not make that field final, should we? Why? Works and filters. So doing the request is created once in app. Yeah. Thread issue important clarification. The suspect maybe a thread takes control. In standard thing, no, not yet. By default, Spring Interceptors, yes, one on the same request thread. Okay, so I was wrong there. Core design never cache out in constructor. You must read it inside pre-handle. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Too early. Inside pre-handle. Okay, that makes sense. So we get override and we read it through pre-handle. Get context here. So that's true. Okay. So to explain the bug, which of course this teaches me a lot also, what's happening is that you see what this does is that when Spring is initializing all the objects at runtime, when Spring is initializing, right, at that level we have not yet set the context. Okay, when you run everything at that level, the objects have been created, we have not yet set the context. At least that's what is being explained. And so this context is still null for that particular thread. So this is initialized to null. And also we are doing the final here, which is not supposed to be that. Okay. I wonder if I don't do final there, do I somehow get the context just for testing sake? Let's try that. Yeah, no. Alright, so it's still the same bug. But what's been explained is that at runtime, where is it? This is initialized before any operation has taken place, and so when it does this constructor, right, what this returns is a null, and that's correct. But what's supposed to happen is that we are supposed to run it before this pre-handle, in this pre-handle, okay, and essentially we are supposed to do something like that, right? And this pre-handle runs when everything has already been initialized, and so we don't need to do all of this, right? And so now we now get the hot context from the thread. So I was thinking in the wrong direction. That was my bad. And if it is correct, then just this simple change of code here should make it, because I thought I was wrong. I was one. It's not supposed to run on different threads, but again, you're supposed to try every line of thinking. But all right, I'm learning a few things myself here. Maybe things have been forgotten. So if you try to send that again, you should have a filter chain, the request. So at some point it should not come here. We should be unable to see it. So if we try that, yeah, so it passes through in there. So we should get yeah, forbidden. There we go. And yeah, you can have, yeah, so that's all I think. But set status message. I think, oh, that doesn't, that takes just one argument. That's interesting. What does this take? Several response. I respond to says message. I think that should be the best one to be using here. If you try that again. So yeah, we're taking about 2 hours. I'm pretty sure most of you are like, and I'm not editing most of the videos, so I am sorry. Very, very sorry. But again, I wanted to, it's important that you see all of this. It allows you, know what real development is all about, not yeah, there we go. Error that's forbidden and stuff. So there we go, forbidden. What's the error message? That, I did a pretty good response message somewhere. A pretty good one actually. For, I think that would be role-based interceptors. Yes, that should be in the interceptor, and that would be like row. No, is that it? No, that's not it. Be like rate limiting. Or maybe that's in course filter. Actually, it's like a pretty good response. Does it get right there? That's right there. Something like that, and that would be, yeah. And essentially, I want to teach that this one here. Do something like that, and on authorize, and then enough permissions to access that. I think that should work. Oh, by the way, if you do not understand what was happening, like again, you just pause the video and read the ChatGPT response. But like I said, it's simple to go over it. It says what happens here is that this is created at application startup outside the HTTP request before authentication happens, before context.set happens, right? So when your application starts, that object is created and everything is initialized. And so when we do this particular computation at the constructor, when you get the context, it's still null at that point. And so therefore everything is permanent and it remains null. And that's why I wanted to even test if we remove the final, but if we remove the final, it then updates, but that's not the case, and it stays null forever, right? So later we'll call that is still a null, so have a null pointer exception. But what's happening is that the filter lifecycle, your auth filter runs. In auth filter, you set null, so doing the request that works fine. And then that's of course when I did the set and then they get under, that worked fine. So interceptor, right? The interceptor does differently. So what you are supposed to do, right, is that inside you must read it inside a pre-handle, right? And this is fetch it per request. This fetch is per request. So it gives the fix, and basically all of this code, this is what changed inside. This is all it did. This is what ChatGPT did. So I don't have to copy all of that. I just have to, run that out. So not authenticated. Basically, you can also add this check here to make sure that if it's not authenticated request, you don't require. It's also returned false. So again, so if it is not authenticated, if authentication is not being sent, that's also a pretty good check to check there. So something like that. So not authenticated, if what result is equal to null. So if we send a public without the authentication, that should block it. Okay. Previously that will not block it. Again, it's going to throw a null pointer. So we're going to have silent box like this. Let me see. So if I comment this out and I restart the application, right? And again, remember we are the public endpoint, okay? If I come here and I just choose no auth, what you don't want to see is the error, right, that we used to see before, but again, cannot invoke that security auth user has role because the return value of that is null. You don't want to see this kind of errors, and that's because like ChatGPT quickly, we did not do this check here, and this is in a case where someone who sends a request without authentication, and it's a public endpoint, but we have to check for rule and stuff. Although this is bad design, right? It's literally me just trying to teach the interceptor, but this is completely wrong design. You're supposed to design in a much more better way. In this case, this particular bad design way, we are definitely going to do this, right? And this helps provide the appropriate forbidding response, right? So if we start it up and we try it again without authentication, we should see forbidden. With authentication by the token, but without the admin rule, we also see the forbidden. Of course, there's a new message, error, unauthorized, you don't have permissions to perform this action, and that's it. And now what we can do, of course, is if we go to our database and just quickly, let's say we refresh our database. right? And we have the 7th, and our admin, our this here is user. If we change it here to say admin, okay, and again I'm just showing you what is being done. And now we try that query again, okay, we should be able to pass through because, okay, sorry, we are not passing through again. But what we can do, I'll need to initialize a login. I'll need to create a login and create the authority. So, you know what we can do is we can change it here to, if it has admin or, let's just say for user, has role user, right? So that allows our again, why that did not go, even though we're changing your database, is because we're using JWT. And JWT already has the role in the token itself, and that's what it used to say. So it doesn't matter whether I change it or have to invalidate a token and we generate a new one by logging in before getting the updated role in that JWT token. But for now, since we're using that existing JWT token, I've not yet configured the login page. We've only configured the registered page, the registered output. What we are going to do is just add the user role there and then attempt to do it, and it's supposed to pass since now this token has the user. And there we go. Even though the role is admin here, the JWT token that we generated earlier for this particular user is with the role of user. Okay, so if we have a sign up and we re-sign up, then the token is going to have role of admin, and then we can use it and remove the role there. So what we have seen is that we have used interceptors to basically protect our endpoints, which is this. So you realize that we are not protecting every application, we're protecting a section of the application, and this is a particular section in this case. Okay, and there are a lot of things you can do with interceptors, like I talked about. At this level, at interceptors, you can read the method, you can read the inputs, right? The parameters passed, which means you can add additional validations here. You can read annotations, which you can have more global verification. For example, you can have the admin only, right? So if I want to make this method to be only admin only, I can have this, and essentially it checks admin only. So it basically checks and implements a global implementation. So wherever I'm going to use an annotation like this, right, within say path, an interceptor can basically intercept it and check for all of that. So I can remove that my logic in the interceptor and put in the admin, and then use in the interceptor read the annotation to check if this method has the admin annotation there, and then run that admin annotation. So that's basically it for interceptions, and that was a simple demo to show you how you can protect against a path. So I can protect against this entire controller basically if I limit the path to users and check if all of them have a particular role. So what we have seen is that we've used the pre-handle. Again, you can use the post handle to write logs, to use so you can actually have the post handle here. So you have the pre-handle, right? And you can do an override also, and you can have like the public void. I think it's post handle. Yeah, and you have everything. So for now, no post handle is needed, but you can also include login and other post handle logic here. So this is very important. Again, we also talk at, I think it's also override. I hope I've not forgotten about that. Override. Public after completion. Yeah, there we go. And basically include cleanup or other logic after completion here. So these are our three methods for interceptors. And again, you register the interceptors. I've shown you how to register interceptors. basically register it. So for now, I have a one called the role interceptor, which basically work for admin endpoints. So I can add endpoints here. So while I'm checking for this admin endpoint, we could this update part admin endpoint. You see that it's not needed. I can implement a much more global interceptor that checks for roles, and then in the registry indicate with different paths, and it's much more global. So that's what I wanted to say. It is sectional, but this one is much, it's not, well, it's not a global per se, but it covers more sections, right, rather than making it too fine-grained like that. So if you look at the role interceptor, it basically just checks if the provided role is equal to the role of the context of the user. Okay, so if the required role is, so this is a required role, is it contained in the context of the user role, right? And that's all the implementation. And this simple logic, it saves you a lot. And you can do this with tenant IDs and other validation checks. And again, it protects sections. And this is basically the end of this particular lesson. And there are other validations you can look into and try by yourself, but I think we have demonstrated the main aim of interceptors here, and how they work and how you can use them in Spring Boot. And it makes a lot of sense, and it really helps in security. So thank you all for watching. I hope this makes sense, although it's been long. It's about 2 hours 30 minutes. I'm sorry for that. We've done a lot of debugging. I'm not going to edit this video. If you're watching it, you'll know that it's been a very long video. And that's how I love to do my videos, to really see the raw version of it. No edits, just clean raw version. And there's a whole lot of learning taking place, and I don't want you to miss that. So if you enjoy this kind of series, like, share, and subscribe. Comment to the channel, leave your comments in the description below. Follow me on my socials, and check out the GitHub repo. And I'll see you in the next one, where we will talk about controllers and method level validation, where we are going to see well, I think we already did the method level validation. Well, we did field level validation, so we're going to check the method level validation. It's the same as the field level validation. It's just basically using annotations on methods, and then the implementation of the annotation is going to show. So I think I'll do it. It's going to be a short one. But that's the end of our video, and thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe. Bye.